Hi everyone, welcome back to Misinformation in Science and Society. Here to listen, not to judge. I'm your host Annie, and today with us we have Ryan Hagen. Hey, so welcome. Could you please introduce yourself a little bit and kind of what you do?
Sure. My name is Ryan Hagen. I'm a sociologist at Columbia University. I study risk, disaster, and social change. And I just finished working on a project where we did a longitudinal study of the social aspects of the COVID pandemic in New York City.
Mm-hmm. So, why did you choose this career initially?
I came to sociology kind of by a weird and winding path. I moved to New York City to go to college, and I thought that I wanted to be a writer. And my first day of college classes in 2001 was the 9/11 attacks that happened. And so that was a huge part of my college experience. And I realized that, things can very suddenly and very dramatically change in the world. And that got me really interested in how that happens and how people prepare for that. And what are the consequences of our constantly trying to prepare for things that we can't necessarily anticipate happening. And so I went to college and I did my stuff and I graduated and I worked in journalism for a while. And over the course of working in journalism, I ran across a bunch of sociologists, kind of by chance. I'd never heard of sociology as an undergraduate or in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And the kinds of questions that sociologists were asking about the world and the way that they were trying to answer them were really appealing and made a lot of sense to me. And so I thought that I wanted to be one myself. So I applied to grad school and became one.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite part of doing what you do now?
Well, I actually really love teaching. I'm teaching a couple of undergraduate classes and a graduate seminar right now, and I just love being able to introduce people to this discipline and to help them open a new part of their imagination to the world around them. And that has been really fulfilling to me. And I love my research. I love being able to talk to people, immerse myself in a new area of the social world that I had never seen before and that most people don't ever get to see. And so I get to collect all kinds of information and observations about the world and then try to make sense of it. And I love doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, why do you think truth is so important, and why do you think misinformation is such a big issue, especially right now?
So truth is important because it is the thing that holds us together in society. To be able to have an intersubjective understanding of the same world is the precondition for society. And
Mhm.
if we live in completely different worlds dominated by different kinds of truth, it makes it really hard for us to see each other and to be seen and to agree on things and to coordinate our actions and to resolve our differences without serious conflict. And so truth is extraordinarily important. And it's also important. I mean, it's important in terms of science and being able to manipulate the physical world in a way that is predictable and understandable. So you can do things like build dams that don't break and make pharmaceuticals that work,
Mhm.
and make the internet so that it doesn't break all the time. So that is one interesting part of truth. That's a sort of scientific truth that is really important for people to understand. But there are certain things like the truth of who won the presidential election or who is, in control of Congress or how money moves in the economy. These things are actually super important truths that aren't necessarily like in the same category as scientific objective truths because they're only exist in the social plane, right? You can't measure them through the natural sciences. It's something that only exists within society. And
Mhm.
that's something that's really important for us to be able to agree on so that we know that we're navigating the same social space, so that we know that we're a part of the same community.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, how do and or people in your field try to avoid or tackle misinformation?
That's an interesting question. So, misinformation is a problem of mistrust, basically, and a lack of trust in each other and a lack of trust in the institutions that figure out and transmit facts about the world around us. And one reason that misinformation is so dangerous is that it preys on people who feel powerless in their lives and who don't have the time to, for example, understand exactly how politics works or understand exactly what the economy is doing at any given moment. Or, we are all have busy lives and we live in a very complicated and specialized world, and we all only in our firsthand experience have a very small understanding of what actually goes on in the world. And we have to trust everyone else and have some faith in the people around us, in the news institutions that give us reporting about the world, in scientific institutions and universities and schools and doctors and the police department, the fire department, all of these institutions that tell us about what they know about the world.
Mm-hmm.
We have to trust them because we can't know firsthand. We live in a world that's too complicated and too far ranging to know everything firsthand. So
Mm-hmm.
misinformation takes advantage of people who are not able to know things firsthand and who are vulnerable to being misled for other people's purposes. So misinformation isn't just like a problem of kind of information pollution in the world, although it is certainly that. It's a problem of misleading people for other people's purposes to exercise power and influence. And it's a hard challenge because one of the things that you can do is try to rebuild people's trust in each other and rebuild trust in institutions. But, a lot of people are getting exploited and are living precarious lives. And it's not as if, a lot of these institutions have really earned and kept their trust on their own. So it's not just a question of, media literacy and how do you make people not believe everything that they read on the internet, is how do you actually build a more just and stable and prosperous society where people aren't tempted into all sorts of weird conspiracy theories and misinformation because they're looking for some kind of help and stability in a world that is actively destabilized.
Mm. Yeah. So, what do you think? I You kind of touched on this already, but what do you think about like the invention of like technology and its impact on misinformation specifically?
Technology is great. It's how we're talking right now. It makes our lives way better, but it also has a dark side, which is that there are all kinds of unintended consequences to technological devices. We have all sorts of accidents where things get loose, radiological accidents or chemical spills. You can think
Mhm.
about that spill in Ohio the other day that released all of these chemicals, and that's one kind of problem. The other kind of problem with technology is that we become dependent on it because it does make our lives more uh, comfortable and easier, and it gets us into all kinds of spaces where we cannot survive without it. And so the trouble with technology is that if it works, it produces all sorts of new kinds of risks that we have to live with. And that's why it's really important, again, for us to build a stable society where people trust each other so that when we do get into emergencies, we can get to safety and trust that we're going to help each other out. When it comes to information technology, things like artificial intelligence and the internet and social media, again, you can think of the same kinds of issues, right? So, social media is a great technology, except it has all of these downsides and risks. And if we aren't conscious of the risks, for example, when Facebook expanded into all of these countries around the world, but didn't have enough local staff or chose not to hire enough local staff trained in the language of the countries where it was deploying to monitor it effectively, they were exposing all of these people to all kinds of risk. And the choice was to make a profit anyway because they didn't see it as important enough to manage those risks to other people, not themselves. Yeah. And so the risk of technology is usually that we try to move too quickly and think about extracting financial gain without paying enough attention to the downside. Of course, you have to balance this because every kind of technology has risk. You don't want to take no risks at all because then you don't make any progress or do any interesting innovations in the world.
Mhm.
But we oftentimes get caught up in short-term profit gains as opposed to taking care of the people who are vulnerable to the technologies that we're developing.
Yeah. So, then what do you yeah, so what do you think like a regular person, because you talked about like mistrust and like like the sources like around us and stuff like that. So what do you think like a regular person can do like in daily life to just like um I guess make sure they receive the right information and know like how to process the information they get and stuff.
Mhm. Well, it's good to be skeptical of things, and it's good to question the things that you see, but you also have to question yourself in a way that is where you're accountable to yourself. So, like, if a news organization, for example, tells you that something is going to happen, pay
Mhm.
attention to whether that thing actually happens or not, and why it might have happened or why it didn't. And try
Mhm.
to develop a sort of track record of public officials and institutions that are telling you things that actually come to pass, right? And that are reliable. And you also want to think about why you believe certain things over others and what's at stake in your believing that, right? And so it's also good to gain a kind of knowledge about the world. It's like important to study in school and learn things about the world around you so that you can't get fooled by people. Like that's actually really important. Like learning about geography is important so that you can know when someone tells you about a foreign country where it is and if it's plausible that whatever is about to happen is about to happen. So those are some of the things that you can do as a regular person. And just like get trust in the people around you. Like make good, strong friendships in your community. It's the people who are socially isolated who or are socially precarious who are the most vulnerable to misinformation. People who have strong, trusting, helpful ties where they volunteer and are helpful to other people in their community are generally insulated from this kind of problem to a
Mhm.
certain extent.
Yeah. Um, so okay, so those are all my questions about misinformation. So just for fun, what inspires you like in life? So like is there like a person, idea, book, um, anything?
Being in nature always inspires me. I love being outdoors. I love being in the wilderness. So seeing the natural world is always really inspiring to me. My kids inspire me. I have two kids who are, young in grade school, and being around them and seeing them encounter the world really inspires me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And also just reading good books. Like I am a big reader of fiction, and that is always inspiring to me.
Yeah. And what advice do you have for people, especially like teens, can be about like information or just like life advice, I guess.
Have fun and make good friends. Those are my best pieces of advice. Friends who make you feel good about yourself, and friends who like help you make good decisions, and people who help you and who you feel happy helping. A good, and of course, a sociologist would say this because sociology is all about the interactions that people have with each other. But
Mhm.
all of the data is there, and all of the studies concur that like if you want a happy and healthy life where you are prosperous and succeed, you have to have good friendships with people who are close to you, people who are different than you, people
Uh-huh.
who you run into only as acquaintances. It's all super important. So build healthy, happy relationships and you'll have a better life.
All right. Thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time to come to for this opportunity, like speak with you and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And yeah, I learned a lot, and it was a pleasure.
Great. Thanks. Pleasure was all mine. It was great talking to you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.